Hello and welcome to the techniques tutorial. Well, actually I'm going to start with the basic stance. So the stance involves how you move around and the position that you fix yourself in with a certain mobility. So for example, in martial arts there are the Kung Fu stances, the boxing stances, the Thai boxing stances. There are any number of stances. However, the most effective form incorporates all of them together into one flexible form. So, the ideal form is a hybrid of each of the individual ones. I come from a taekwondo background, however I've done all sorts of other martial arts, so I can see the limitations of taekwondo rather glaringly. It's too wide, for instance, and too side on. It doesn't allow for that turn of the body. There are limitations to all and strengths to all, so the stance I'll be covering here won't necessarily be the be-all and end-all. However, it is a good compromise, middle ground, I believe. So let's get started with that. First of all, in your stance, I don't know if you can see too well, but the toes press into the floor. This gives a certain raise and mobility. So, for instance, if you're too planted, you won't be able to move quickly from one direction to the next. However, if you are too light in your feet, you won't have that stability to be able to root to the floor. Now, rooting is a strong component of the Eastern martial arts in particular, but it's a concept which is used in all contexts. So, for instance, the basic stance in many of the Tai Chi style Eastern internal martial arts involves rooting to the floor to feel that strong connect with the earth. Now that's a good solid form. This is called horse riding stance. From here you can't do much. This is the only problem. So the idea generally is to take the mobility of the ballet dancer and blend it with the stability of mountain or horse riding posture, so that you have this application within a more westernized boxing stance. So here there's a sense, if we start from the beginning, I will just go over the basic stance. The left foot is generally forward, the hands are up and protecting the face from harm. There's an interconnectedness throughout the entire body. The toes press into the floor, particularly the big toe. Now, the toes are very important. If the toes are not engaged, then there's a lack of power from the base. So there's a sense of pressing in through the toes to the floor, pushing and gripping to the floor. There's a lift of the pelvis and hips, and there are many more components. However, the basic stance is side on, 45 degrees, hands up, mobility, not too far apart with the legs and feet, and not too close. I'll just give you a demonstration of moving in that stance. Now, obviously, you can move fast or slow, and it needs to be applied to everyday life. So these are habits that you will eventually train yourself to do automatically in more everyday situations. There are so many different components, it's difficult to know where to start. With the Hara Center, which is here. Now, in martial arts, it's often a question of the out-breath, which stabilizes the body. So there are several sounds you can make. Ha! Ha! This expands the abdomen, draws in the abdomen. By exhaling the breath, this braces the body. The exhale tends to stabilize the body, which is why it's focused on in martial arts. For example, if you fully exhale, the core, the Hara Center, is strong. Now, the Hara Center is known as the maintenance center and the physical center of the body. So this is where all the physical power derives from. The internal systems call it the maintenance center because they want to increase their health. So they stimulate the internal activity of the organs for health reasons, whereas the external martial arts tend to strengthen this area to allow them to twist and to develop power and strength. So one is an internal emphasis and the other is an external emphasis. Now, if you externalize too much, there's not enough energy to circulate and provide nourishment more widely. However, a certain amount of physical exercise is like testing the machine to its max and pushing the capabilities that much higher. So a balance is key here in maintenance and external power exercises. So you've got the Hara Center. This generates the energy which it sends up through the spine. This is known as the Kundalini force in yoga systems and is in Tai Chi. It's the energy circulated and sent through the spine, which is the same idea entirely. Once it's made a connection to the brain, it functions more intelligently, so that intelligence can meet the physical body, and the energy can be directed intelligently rather than just merely instinctively. Here is the diaphragm, or the solar plexus, which is responsible for inhalation predominantly. Obviously contributes to exhalation. However, inhalation emphasizes the solar plexus. Now, when you inhale, there's an expansion of the Hara Center. This draws the energy in. There's an emphasis on drawing energy in here. When you breathe out, the diaphragm contracts and pulls the Hara Center up. So the two work in unison, they're not working in isolation. This Hara Center is the maintenance center. This is known as the heart center, the solar plexus. The heart center because it circulates the energy. This generates the energy, the Hara Center. So there's generation, circulation, and intelligence the brain directs. Now, the Hara Center relays with the brain because they're two ends of a polarity. This is the positive end, this is the negative, the brain. So the brain receives energy from the maintenance center, the physical center, and it relays and runs through the circulatory heart center. So these two centers, there are more, are the main two centers involved in martial arts. The Hara Center is used for power and the solar plexus can be seen as a way of circulating energy, drawing in breath, and assisting in emptying the lungs, obviously, with the help of the Hara center, which also assists in full exhalation. So, one of the main principles to start us off with in martial arts is to fully exhale during an attack. So, with the punch, you don't just go pop, pop. You go. Now, if you fully exhale, this prepares the body to then draw in maximum oxygen and receive energy and a maximum oxygen intake from the lungs and body, so that diffusion of oxygen can be maximized. This obviously provides us with much more energy. So we have the Hara center working with the solar plexus. Now, I haven't got time to, unfortunately, go fully into detail here, but the main message here is the Hara center is the physical center of the body. It's therefore very useful for kicks, punches, etc. The solar plexus circulates the energies so that they get where they need to go. So one is more circulatory, distributive. I can't think of the word. Distributes the energy more. The other one uses the energy. So the two work together for maximum efficiency. So to engage the Hara center, there's a lift of the hip and a tilt of the hip forwards, whether kicking or punching or anything. So this is lifted and tilted forward. This stretches the spine maximally for full engagement of the spine, hips, and there's a certain rooting when you're in this powerful stance. So there's a tilt and a corresponding lift of the solar plexus. So there's a sinking and a buoyancy together. Let me just demonstrate a little bit of that. So as you can see, this is a principle that applies anywhere, really. I'm just showing you via kicks and punches. There's not really enough room to do, and by myself there's not enough room to do throws and things like that. But it applies more broadly. In the next bit, we'll look at the neck and how that supports the head and body.